really am quite bad at that. So this week's class should end up in the regular place where I showed you how to find them last week with the 3 stripes. I had to do a little, there was a technical problem last week. So anyway, I am thinking about you guys as we get into more of the semester. If you are having problems, with the class, you come to the TA, GA, or me, fine, but if you're just getting stressed out, and by week 3, sometimes that starts, and that remember that there's counseling service on campus, there are help services on campus. Don't go it alone, okay? No one has to tell me anything about their lives, but I always share with my students that I have had serious depression and anxiety in my life. I got help for that, and quite frankly, I really love my life, but it took some work. And there were times before I got treatment that it was just really hard. And I'm seeing a lot in the press right now about celebrities' children's who have had depression, and I don't want you guys, life's just a roller coaster, and sometimes the dips can be pretty scary. And we have been in COVID for 2 years. I did not have a pandemic when I was your ages. And even if it seems like it hasn't been stressful for you, just the very fact that the news is always coming at us with, it's dangerous, people are dying, people are getting terribly ill, they've got long-term effect, all of that, affects us. So long and the short of it is, I really want you to take care of yourselves. If you are having really bad stress or something, get help for that. And if you need to talk to me to find someplace on campus, or email me and say, I can't find it, though I think you probably can. And last I knew, they were doing online appointments, but now with campus open, I don't know if they're back in person, the counseling center. There's also peer support on campus, and you just type in PEER support, and you can find them as well. Okay, so and with that, I'm going to take 10 minutes, and I'm going to put you, let's see, we have 56 people. Oh, that's so great, Clay. Thank you. Thank you for telling us that. And I'm going to do a small group thing. And this is just, I'm going to put you in, I'm going to put together, I think, 8 groups. And I don't know how many people will end up in those. But it's not to do any work. It is to just talk a little bit to each other about how things are going. You can talk about the class, and if you want to talk about Donnie Darko and be like, what the heck was that about? Absolutely, have at it. But also, feel free to exchange contact information, email addresses, if you're comfortable with that. I don't give my cell phone number out to very many people, but you guys might. So that if you have, I hope you can kind of, we're not in person, but a lot of times in person, you get to know the person sitting next to you, and you're like, the midterm's coming up, you want to study. So I'd like you to kind of get to know a small pod of people today. And again, it's 10:07. I'm going to bring you back at 10:17. And yeah, this is mostly just to allow you to get to know a few people in the class, okay? Okay, I am going to start those, I hope. Woo! I'm in the main room. Hagen, are you here?
Yep.
Yes, all of. Okay. Hi, just wanted to say hi. I'm going to have to send people to groups who come in late.
Okay.
So I didn't put you, Mark, or myself in a group because sometimes those of us in authority figures end up killing the buzz.
Yeah.
They can
And
just
also,
forget themselves.
Norton, it keeps contacting me while the class is happening.
Okay, I'm going to try to get Molly into a group. Molly, are you there?
I think she can't hear us because we're still in the chatting room. She is not.
But she's not in a, I'm supposed to be able to drag her into a group. Okay, let me go back in here. Hang on. Okay. Hi, Molly. I'm trying to get you into a group. We'll see how that works. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm pulling you into a group now. There she goes. I'm hoping you're going to group 4. Okay, people, be on time, please. Molly, are you moving into group 4? I'm hoping. Okay. Okay, Hannah, I'm going to try to send you into a group too. Okay, I did that. But they're both still okay. Ah. Come on, Mommy. I call myself Mommy to my cats. So, oh my. Okay, Dylan, I'm going to send you down to a group. Let's see. I've sent to group 1. I've sent to group 4. Let's try group 2. Off you go. Okay, Molly, are you still here with us? Huh. Okay, I tried to send you. Hang on. I tried to send you. Hang on. Why is this not working? Okay. It's, oh, here you go. There they go. They're gone.
Well done.
Good.
Phew. So how are you guys? Contact you class?
Oh, sorry.
Or
I
did,
think I don't know it's my internet problem or something. I was missing all of the sentence.
oh, actually, I was asking Hagen if Norton contacts you during class or if students are contacting you about
Yeah.
about Norton.
It's Norton contacting me during class. Like the students will email me during class too, but I don't want to reply to them while they're supposed to be listening to your class. But yet, because I basically, honestly, like 15 kids have reached out to me with just these little questions, and I'm able to resolve them. Usually, it's just they buy it from the U Insight bookstore, and then they have trouble with the registration code. Like they mix it up with the student set or something like that. So honestly, it's been good. Like almost everyone I think has been resolved by now.
Thank you so much for doing that. I know I sent someone to you over the week.
Yeah. Yeah, she was
And,
having the same mistake where just the student set she put in for the registration code. So I just told her about that.
yeah, and I did take a look at the Inquisitive yesterday. Everybody who had done it by midday yesterday had 100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that I haven't checked it today. I suppose I should. But today's the first one that is going to, and what I'm going to do, and Hagen, I'm so glad I'm remembering this. Thank you for talking. Oh, people. I'm trying to be understanding. Okay, Danny, I'm sending you to a breakout group. You are to get to know a few people in the class. Here we go. Oh, we'll put you in group 5. Update. Off they go. This is kind of fun. Oh no. Oh, okay. Try again, Heather. Mohammed, I'm sending you to a group to get to know a few people in the class. Come on, little machine, you can help me. Okay, why is it not letting me? Oh, there we go. Okay, let's see. Oh, because somebody's in the process of reconnecting. Hang on, Mohammed, I'm going to find a group for you. Come on, machine. Come on, machine. Oh, come on, machine. Oh, there we go. There we go. Come on. It won't scroll down. And I've already put people in group 1 and 2. Come on. Okay, you're going in group 1. Wow, this is not working. Let's try that. Okay. I believe it did work. Phew. Okay. Sometimes I'm just exhausted. What was I saying?
Yeah, you just remembered something and then it happened.
Yes. I am going to, in our grading thing, thank you so much for being my brain today. Over in the grade center, I'm going to make a column for Inquisitive Chapter 2. And they can get up to 2 points based on the percentage they get over there.
Yep.
So the easiest way to do it is to make a little card that says like 100% they get 2 points, 50% they get 1 point, 75%, and just then every person you just kind of go through and do that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't done it before, but I'm sure I can get it done today, just with some tinkering.
Oh, there's no rush.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions, I am in office hours from 1 to 2 today. And actually, well, I've only got 2 minutes. I may not be able to do it right now, but let me see if I have time to get this done. You can do it, Heather. Full grade center. Do it. You can do it.
Oh, don't stress out about this right now. I'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, but I haven't created the column yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if I don't, let's see here. I'm going to say Inquisitive column, chapter 2. And we'll just copy that. I was sick yesterday and I'm so much better today, but I'm still just like catching up.
Yeah.
That my poor little brain. Yeah, yesterday was a very weird day. Okay, include this column in the grade center. Yes, let's go. And I believe it is now there. And if you have any questions using it, let me know.
Yep.
Oh, it is there.
Perfect. All right, thanks so much.
Oh, and with 1 minute to spare.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, perfect. I'll get to this later today.
As I said, take your time, and I'm happy it's a beautiful day today. And that, okay, I am going to try to stop the breakout groups. Here we go. And here they come. Hi, everybody. You should be back from your breakout group. I know that wasn't very long, but I hope you got to chat a little bit and maybe meet a couple people. And basically, drop ad is over. So nobody's, I mean, you can still drop the course. but you can't add the course. So nobody new is going to come in. So I thought today was a good day to meet people. Thank you, Jen. I'm glad. That makes me happy. Okay, so I am going to start our week. Thanks, Lacey. And I'm going to go into our Chapter 2 learning objectives. These are in your textbook. They're at the front of Chapter 2, so no worries there. Just a reminder that you were to have done the inquisitive for Chapter 2 before you came to class today, and you were to watch Donnie Darko and read Chapter 2. So Hagen will be assigning points in your Blackboard based on your work in inquisitive. So if you got 100% in inquisitive, and yesterday everybody's that I checked had 100% in Chapter 2. I was so proud of you all. If you got 100% in Chapter 2 inquisitive, you will get 2 points in Blackboard. If you got, say, 75% in inquisitive, good job, then you would get 1.5 points. Whoa, I didn't get to read that whole thing. Hang on. Okay, sure, Molly, thank you. Okay, now I've got a cat whining. Okay, I'm going to continue with the lesson. Here we go. All right, so you know about inquisitive. I think we're hitting our stride here. So I'm going to move on. We did talk about this a little bit last week, but you can tell that the chapter is also a lot this week about form and content. Content is what is happening in a film, the plot. They did go into other artwork, and like they had images of sculptures that were a male figure, but they were done very differently. So it was like the content was a male figure, the form was whatever the artist used and how they did it, and that. So form is how. Okay, content is what. And Donnie Darko has formalist elements in it, and yet it also has realist elements in it, as it tells the story that may or may not make sense to any of us. Okay, so content in Donnie Darko, it is the story of this young man. He lives in suburbia, a little town called Middlesex, which I think is a purposely selected name. And in the film, we have to figure out, or at least try to make sense of, whether what Donnie is experiencing is real. Probably a manifestation of science fiction time travel. That would have, he's back in a wormhole when most of the film happens, and he has to write it at the end, is kind of the scientific, the sci-fi version of it. Or is it a projection of his mental illness? He is being diagnosed by his therapist as a schizophrenic. So the content is the events that we are seeing, you know, and we see what he sees at times, that he is seeing what the people in his world don't. So this kind of scary rabbit, other people in his world can't see that. When the mirror is kind of doing that liquidy thing, other people don't see that in the mirrors in the house, but he sees it. Okay, so there's what's happening, and then that's the story, and then there's the form it's being told in, that the filmmaker used to tell it. So I'm going to just cough And I'm back. So form, we're going to talk over and over and over in this class, and you're going to read it. You'll be so tired of the term cinematic language by the end of this semester. But it is the best way to describe the elements of film that are used by filmmakers to create the story and impression, emotion, whatever meaning that they want you to have. It is a language that we interpret as the people who are receiving this cinematic language. And so we are going to have specific days on these things coming up. But in the book, they talk about and they introduce you to the concepts of mise en scène, which includes all kinds of elements in the arrangement of the shot. So mise en scène can be the design elements like lighting, setting, costuming, makeup, props, and it gets sometimes, and we all struggle with this. I've taught this many times. I've taught filmmaking, and cinematography refers to the lighting and camera work. The director of photography oversees this, and so lighting kind of comes both in mise en scène and cinematography, and we'll get to that later. Performance, acting, sound. Sound generally falls into dialogue, and that can sometimes be voiceover, or it can be sync dialogue. So we see the person saying the words and they're having a conversation, or sometimes there's a voiceover. So dialogue, music, and sound effects, okay? Ambient sound, the sound a room kind of makes. Some people put that in sound effects, and some people say that's a fourth category of audio, okay? Narrative, we'll be talking about that more next week, the actual structure of the story. Editing, how is the material that they've filmed, how is that cut up to either make sense or not make sense, or scare you, or cause you to be nervous. So these are elements of film form. Okay. These are 3 things that apparently I promised to teach you today in the syllabus: frame, shot, and scene. And so I am actually going to take you to, I'm going to tell you what these are, and then we're going to look at a little, at a shot, and we'll talk about this. Okay, so a frame is one still image. When, if you shoot film, if you shoot motion picture film, it comes out as a strip. It has to be processed chemically, so all of that jazz. It comes out as a strip, but every single one of those little pictures that's on that strip is a frame, and it is a still image. And the book does write about this, and I think I talked a little bit last week that you could look up the term persistence of vision. Because psychologically, there's lots of reasons. It's been written about a lot, and different people have different theories. But why do we see a series of still images? When they are projected for us, why do we perceive motion? And it works. It doesn't work below a certain frame rate. So generally speaking, now films are projected at 24 frames per second. When silent films existed, it was around 18. They couldn't kind of hold it. That could be part of it, Dylan, but I mean, our eyes aren't actually taking individual stills when we move our head, whereas a camera is taking individual stills that when projected, we perceive as motion. During the silent era, cameras generally filmed at and projectors projected at 18 frames per second. But there was a little slippage sometimes. So a frame is one of those still images that makes up the entire strip of film. What is a shot? The shot is the entire strip of film. In production, and I know a lot of you want to be filmmakers, in production, a shot is considered from camera start to camera stop. So, and you'll see, you know, those clapboards they have, and then it'll be like, scene 3, take, scene 3, shot 4, take 1. And they go clap. And they have rolled the camera, they slate it, which is what that's called, the slate. Then the director says, action. And off they go. And then cut. When the director decides that action is over with, they stop the camera. That whole piece from camera start to camera stop is called a shot in production. It's still the same thing, Dylan. I mean, the medium is different, but you're in digital video production, you're still slating, you're still having individual actions recorded in sequence. So there's a frame, and then there is the shot. So it's the same, it's just that you can't touch the film the same way that you can if you're shooting on film. And that I started out shooting on film, and then nobody shot on film anymore, so now we do digital. There was a brief pass through analog video, but very brief. Did that answer your question, Dylan? Okay, thanks. Okay, so I actually put up here the exact number, the exact key frame I wanted to go to in the film to show you a shot. So I am going to share application screen. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Yay. So this is a frame, okay? It is one image, and generally in video, you can actually use your arrow keys left and right to go forward and backward one frame at a time. I'm not going to do that because I want to show you the entire shot here because it's kind of interesting. And it has some camera work in it, and yeah. Okay, anyway, here we go. Magic world, killing moon will come too soon. Fate up against your way. In the starlit nights I saw you, so cruelly you kissed me. Your lips a magic world, your sky all hung with jewels. The killing moon will come too soon. Fate. Okay, so when they go to this shot, that's a new shot. So the shot I wanted you to look at is the one that starts up at the tree. Now this camera move is they're tilting down to Samantha on the trampoline, and then they pan over to Mom reading a book on the patio. And so it's kind of a longish shot that covers more than one thing. And that's why I kind of like it. But it starts up in the tree, it pans down, tilts down, pans over to Mom. She looks up, and that motivates the cut to the new shot. She looks up, we now cut to a new shot that's a wide shot of Donnie arriving home. And that, so do you understand shot and frame? Okay. Any questions? And we're going to go on to scene at a later point. Okay. Okay. But as I talk about these things, I'm introducing terms that we will continue to, it is part of developing your language. So the idea of a camera tilting down or tilting up, that is camera motion, okay? Panning is generally left to right, tilting is generally up and down. My brain continuously messes that up. Okay. Going back to the slides. Okay. Got it? Got it? Okay. Here we go. So, you know, a frame, one still image. A shot from in a film, it is from the first frame to the last frame of a sequential piece of media. Okay? Then a scene is action that takes place in a single location in continuous time. So it is still the same scene when Donnie walks across the patio because he's still in the same location as Mom and Samantha were in the previous shot. So you see the shot would come down from the tree, past Samantha on the trampoline, over to Mom, cut to Donnie walking across where Mom is. It's still the same scene because we are in the same location, okay? And we will continue to work with this. A lot of students get a little confused about scene. If you're a production student, generally a scene it's easy to tell when a scene changes because on a script you've got that new slug line. Interior, classroom, day. And then, you know, a bunch of stuff happens. Students are taking a quiz. The teacher is looking at somebody who might be cheating. Cut to exterior, Letty Library, night. And at that point, you're at a new scene because you have changed, well, actually, in that case, you've changed both location and time because you've gone from day to night. Okay? All right. We are buzzing along. Okay. At the end of your chapter, there is a analyzing segment, and we are going to use that. So we are going to analyze just a very quick scene in Donnie Darko, and I'm going to clue it up here. 5046. I'll be right there. Hang on. I'm not sure I'm understanding, Daniel. You mean when he then moves into the house by the refrigerator? The way that, okay, yeah, I knew I would end up having to explain this when I picked that shot because it is, he moves then from that second shot where he's crossing the patio into the kitchen. In a script that would be written as continuous. It is technically a new scene when he ends up in the kitchen, but it can't be because of the way it's recorded. Okay? So generally they would consider all of that, the shot down from the tree, across to mom, cut to Donnie walking across and into the kitchen. Generally, they would consider that all the same scene, because they haven't had to change camera positions. They've moved the camera, but they haven't shut everything down and moved into the kitchen, and it's a new time. It's a little bit complicated, and I probably should have picked an easier an easier shot. I would say yes, in terms of your understanding of that. And actually, I'm going to, the book actually, yes, actually, don't even regard my generally. Yes, it is when there is a clear narrative change. The same story part isn't continuing. That's the way the book presents it. And that's the way I'm going to keep with it. And what we're going to watch right now is actually going to help with this. Actually, no, Dylan. Usually that is two separate scenes being cut together. You know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so that would be called a sequence, because it makes sense together, or it's meant it's meant to, by the director is trying to tell you something. But it is two separate locations at two separate times. So it is actually two separate scenes. Is that what you meant, Jessica? Perfect. Okay, let me show you this. I'm going to try to go ahead here. Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to try to get to Donnie Darko here, and I'm going to show you, and this is going to be interesting because there are different locations. They're in the living room, the kitchen, the living room, but I'm going to show you a chunk of this, okay? So I'm going to take that out, share this, go, go, go. I have to mute myself, hang on.
For these Super Bowl champions. You're right, Dan. Coach Joe Gibbs is on the sidelines, water dripping off his glasses, but he's got to be thinking, what happened? What went wrong tonight? And here's the kick. Oh! It's no good.
Shit. Quarterback. Miracle. You need to go for a safety.
Well, Mark Rippon certainly has some big shoes to fill, that's for certain. He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait and see.
You guys want anything?
Green once again with a display of amazing speed.
I'm gonna get a beer.
Good evening, ladies and grooms. Join us at the Middlesex Pavilion Mall for the Middlesex Halloween Hunt.
Again, it's a little hard to totally classify this because the dad goes into the kitchen, but Donnie can still, he can, you know, Donnie's here and, oh, come on, Heather. It's very hard to cue on. Okay, this is good. Even though the dad is in a, it's similar to the patio shot into the kitchen. We're still sort of in the same location. We can see Donnie in the background and Dad coming to the refrigerator with this thing coming out of him. So this is still part of the same situation that Donnie is dealing with. Okay. He's back. Okay. So let's first discuss content. What happens? What is the story part? Who is there? What are they doing? What happens in this scene that I've shown you? They're watching football. That is correct. A very American guy thing. Is it important how the game is going in terms of what's happening in the scene? Okay, tell me. Okay, interesting. Kian, can you tell me why you say yes?
I think they were cheering for the guys that were not doing very good, so they didn't really have an excitement state of mind, I guess, because their team was losing.
Their team's losing. The father throws a beer cap at the TV, and even the dialogue in the TV, it's like this guy, there's water dripping off his glasses. He's, you know, there's, generally speaking, you want to pay attention to that kind of thing because they probably did not choose just any old football clip. It affects their mood, the mood of the, it affects the mood of the dad and the friend over there. I'm not sure what's going on with Donnie's mood at that point. I'm going to have you guys help me with that. So generally, they may have actually created the footage that you're seeing on that TV. I'm not familiar enough with football to know if that was a real clip from a real game. But it does motivate part of their behavior. Can you explain that a little bit more? Is it kind of a reflection of Donnie's mood? So are you saying, Lacey, that Donnie seems to be more, I don't know, what would you say Donnie's mood is that's being reflected there?
I was thinking he kind of seems a little out of it and a little bit more down, not necessarily because of the game, but more probably with his mental state. So I was wondering if the game going poorly is kind of a reflection of his mood and the story that follows.
Absolutely could be, and it motivates the mood, like the mood of the men on the other side. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Donnie loves football. You know, from watching this scene, I think he's there because his friend and his friend's dad are there, and his dad, so he's expected to sit there. But, you know, he had been sleeping. If you really care about a game, you don't go to sleep during it. So, you know, he is sort of presented as not that into this. And when he wakes up, he's kind of trying to figure out what's going on. Interesting, Dylan. Yeah, so we're going to get to the manifestation that comes along. So far we know that they're watching football. What else do we know about what happens in the scene I showed you? What's up with Samantha skipping through a couple times? Is that important? That is true, yes. It is innocence, and it's sort of, it is easy to predict where she's going. Yes, Daniel, she's oblivious to what these people are doing. Like, honestly, when I grew up, and my father and brothers were not football watchers, but if that had taken place in my house, that little girl would have been told not to go in front of the TV while somebody's watching it. So I thought it was really interesting that she kind of laps around the way the house is set up, allows that running. And she seems completely oblivious, or she's ignoring the game. She's ignoring them being there. Donnie's seeing the timelines. You mean when she is led by the gluey bubble? Thanks. It does provide that. And they have her lapping at the beginning of this, near the beginning of the scene, this innocent, happy girl. And I mean, she seems quite, we've seen her on the trampoline. We know she's in that dance troupe. She's running around the house. She probably drives her parents nuts with all her energy. And then we see her again when the bubble is pulling her. And it would have been probably considered too coincidental to see her only when the bubble is leading her. So they kind of establish her as doing this, and then have her be part of Donnie's bubble vision. Bubble vision. Yes, let's call it that. Okay. So Samantha's running, doing laps in front of the TV. The men are watching football. Donnie wakes up, and what else happens? What else is content? The dad goes for beer. He goes into the kitchen to get beer. And I think you can say, in terms of content, that Donnie sees a bubble coming out of, yes, his dad's chest. The force. So now we're starting to, yes, and Donnie follows his, I mean, he kind of looks down and he giggles. He almost sounds drunk at that point. Like when somebody sees something weird when they're drunk, or they see something normal, but it looks weird to them, and they kind of, he kind of seems drunk. But because he saw his father's bubble lead him to the refrigerator, and he saw Samantha's bubble, he follows his bubble. And then we won't go the next one. So in terms of content, you see what has happened. Now I'm going to pull up here. You can do it. Okay. So form. Yeah, would that have been important to see the father and the other men react to Donnie leaving? I would say that the director did not believe so. I think if they were concerned about him, we would have seen a shot of that. But they're into the game, and as I said, I don't think Donnie is that into this. And so him wandering off, I think they got back into the game, hoping their team could pull it together. And Generally speaking, when you make films, and most directors go by this, it is they want forward momentum of the story, and the story is Donnie's. And so as he leaves the room, we follow him because that is the main course of the story. So that's probably why we don't see that. So let's consider these 4 things. Well, I mean, I think that, and this gets me off a little bit of where I was going, but it's okay. A lot of this film is about a disconnected youth. Okay, it happens to be Donnie Darko, and that is quite the name. But the whole suburban thing, the whole guy who preaches about love but has a kiddie porn thing happening, there's so much in this film that is about a young person trying to not feel totally alone and alienated in a world that is, in an adult world, that is often run by deceit and evil and all kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, I think he is disconnected from these other 3 men, and the dad is kind of like, Donnie, he doesn't really get into this. So yeah, Allison, I think that this is a scene that further shows that. So considering shots, lighting, film speed, and sound effects, I'm going to go back to the clip. So in case we need to see it for a minute, and I'm going to let's start with shots. What kind of shots? And by kind, I would say, close up, medium shot, long shot, moving shots. Come to us, Donnie, come to us. Is this shot in a realist manner for the most part? Like this beginning part here, let's just. Okay, so what kind of shot is this? Does anybody know what it's called? Extreme close-up, that is correct, good job. And this is the first time we see, can anybody remember, I could play the whole clip again, but let's not get overdone here. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Let's watch for lighting, shots, film speed, and sound effects.
And so his takes what made me realize that for the last
people out of our lives.
Coach Joe Gibbs is on the sidelines, water dripping off his glasses, but he's got to be thinking, what happened? What went wrong tonight? And here's the kick. That's no good.
Order. Remember, you need to go for safety.
Well, Mark Rippon certainly has some big shoes to fill, that's for certain. He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait and see.
You guys want anything?
So the first time we see the extreme close-up of Donnie's eyes is after he has started to see the bubble coming out of his dad's chest.
Order. Remember, you need to go for safety.
Well, Mark Rippon certainly has some big shoes to fill, that's for certain. He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait and see.
You guys want anything?
Okay. So again, in terms of form, what are the shots conveying at this point? Why go to an extreme close-up? Shocking, it shows his shock and confusion. focus on his reaction. Good. Yeah, like we are going, this is kind of to cue us also that we are going to now be seeing one of Donnie's things. And that, I mean, Donnie doesn't immediately leap up and go, oh my God, what's that coming out of your chest? Like, you know, he just is looking and we look with him. Good. Yeah, we're going more into his perspective. And so the form, like the way the filmmakers are showing us and telling us the story, which is the form, this extreme close-up is starting a new emotional arc in this experience for us because it's starting a new arc for Donnie.
I'm gonna get beer.
Now this is a medium shot. Why is there no bubble now? He's stationary and he got where he's going. The bubbles seem to lead the person, and that's the bubble effect, whether it is happening in his mind or whatever, it is teaching Donnie to follow the bubble that eventually comes out of him. Okay. And now when he's going back somewhere else, the bubble comes back again.
Good evening, ladies and
Hang on, I gotta see. Like a GPS. Might be better than my GPS.
join us at the Middlesex Pavilion Mall for the Middlesex Holiday.
Now I think this is interesting. Let's watch what's on the TV right here.
Today MVP, we're just gonna have to wait and see.
Sorry, I can't get you there.
You guys want anything?
Green once again with a display of amazing speed.
I'm gonna get beer.
Good evening, ladies and grooms. Join us at the Middlesex Pavilion Mall for the Middlesex Halloween Hunt.
Okay. I think that's an interesting part of it. And what's the tone of that commercial? Spooky, scary, mysterious, cryptic, evil, horror-ish. And we are in, yeah, we're getting into that. We're getting more and more now that Donnie has got his bubble coming along here. It kind of helps lead the effect for us as the audience. I mean, I think having Halloween in this film is so apropos, and it kind of comes up, you know, for the party that they throw and for people being in costume and all of that. Yes, exactly. You know, join us. So, and the little girl comes skipping through with the bubble leading her. So there's both that kind of party, young, happy aspect to it, but then, you know, we come, yeah, and we come back and now Donnie is having his experience. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go on. I'm going to have to go with the bubble isn't subtle for Donnie because it forms into a hand that tells him, come on. In case you haven't been paying attention, Donnie, this is what I want you to do. And again, technically this would be considered, sorry. Technically, this would be considered a new scene because the bubble is now going up the stairs. But, yeah, actually, that is where the new scene begins because Donnie's in a new location too. Okay. Got to go backward. So far, we've determined that the extreme close-ups are adding impact, emotional impact. It's helping us understand Donnie's point of view, state of mind. They're also feel identified with him and the weirdness that he is seeing around him. Okay, my internet is having a little breakdown. Come on, internet. Okay, I'm back. My internet was having a breakdown. Okay, I'm going to show you at what point in this scene, I'm going to have you, now that you've watched it a couple times, I'm going to try to have you figure out at what point in this scene does the film form cue us that something weird is going to happen. Because it's before the bubble comes out of Dad's chest, okay? Okay, I've got to go to the chats because sometimes I can't read all of them. That could, I'm reading Zayad right now, and then I'll come into you, Clay. Yeah, he seems sleepy. He seems down, as somebody said earlier, when the football is happening. But then when the bubbles start appearing out of Dad, he does get more alert. And, you know, part of the extreme close-ups help show that he is now more engaged. But I mean, I guess if I were bored in a classroom and then all of a sudden I saw a bubble starting to come out of someone's chest, I'd probably become more alert too. And that. Clay, what music are you talking about? Can you clarify that for me? Because it's correct. Okay. So I'm going to actually, it is a change in the music that happens with a very specific shot in the, we go back to the TV and they have a close-up of the player whose name is Williams. I want us to watch that. Okay, hang on. And the music changes at the same time this shot happens, and I want you to talk to me about the shot. Oh, sorry. Gotta go back further.
Quarterback. Nerve. Need to go for a safety.
Well, Mark Evans certainly has some big shoes to fill, that's for certain. He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait to see.
That is the moment when we get cued that we're going to come back to a shot and Donnie, and something is going to have changed. What happens in that shot? As well, the music, the game starts to fade away and the music gets more prominent, and it is kind of this eerie, semi-religious, semi-spiritual, weird music. But what happens in that shot of Williams' back? Let me see if I can get us back to it.
But he's got to be thinking, what happened? What went wrong tonight? And here's the kick. Oh! It's no good.
Shit. Quarterback. Nerve. Need to go for a safety.
Well, Mark Rippon certainly has some big shoes to fill, that's for certain.
He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait and see.
Talk to me about that shot of Williams' back. It slips into slow motion. And that if you notice the shot of Williams' back, as the music kind of shifts a little bit and becomes more prominent, it goes into slow motion, and that is cueing us that something weird is going to be happening. And when we come back to Donnie, he's got a look on his face that implies he started to see it in slow motion. He looks over to his dad, and the whole bubble thing starts. So in terms of form, they play with slow motion in this film to add to the state of mind confusing part of what Donnie experiences. That's at 51:22. Can I make it go just a tiny? Let's see if I can do it. Yes.
Well, Mark Rippon certainly has some big shoes to fill. That's for
Big
certain.
shoes to fill.
And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait and see.
It's very subtle, but I believe they went into slow motion. And then, and Donnie sees something that makes him feel like something weird is happening, and he looks to his dad, and now we see the bubble happening. So you can see the ways in which form, oh, rats. Sorry. I actually wanted to also talk about lighting, and I didn't, so I have to now go back in there. You can see how the different parts of form help to convey not just information, like, okay, these guys are all on one side of the room and Donnie's by himself on the other side of the room. There's kind of like some, that's what's factually happening, but it also kind of conveys that that disconnection that somebody was chatting about, and that alienation. So we've talked about what happens in this thing, and I want to just, lighting is part of form as well. Okay, these two in this room kind of freak me out too, but we won't talk about how there's mental problems. Okay, talk about the lighting here. What is the general lighting in this scene in the living room? Oh, wow. Check out the mise en scène. Look at the little stuffed bunny in the background here. Given that, like, oh, looming Frank thing happening. Check out that mise en scène. Yes, I totally agree. His face is half lit and half, I wouldn't call it bright. Actually, this is not a contrasty shot. This contrast means there's very bright brights and there's very dark darks. This is kind of a, somebody said dim, a darkish shot. There are shadows. You know, and a lot of people, if you were analyzing this, would say Donnie's kind of split. You know, he's got the dark side of himself. That's like, if he's got paranoid schizophrenia, then, you know, he, yes, the both mindsets are emphasized. You know, some people, if you analyze the cinematography, and you might have to, would talk about, this is the side that goes in and, you know, floods the school, burns down Jim Cunningham's house. And this is the side that is struggling more toward the light. But generally speaking, it's a fairly dark shot. And I'm going to go to the wider shot here.
Coach Joe Gibbs is on the sidelines.
Let's get to the
He's got to be thinking, what happened? What went wrong tonight?
Oh, I want to talk about the camera motion here. Samantha skipping through motivates the pan over to the box. Look at this. There we go. It her movement, the camera follows that to get over to this side of the room. So what's up with the lighting here? Just describe it. You don't have to tell me what it means or anything. Just tell me what are you seeing? This is a wide shot. It's interesting because I think you're right. It is more even in that all of the men's faces are pretty much darkish. When you say it's more well lit, what do you mean, Aiden? I think it was Aiden. Okay. What you're seeing here is in the background, there's the implication that there is some kind of atmospheric light out here behind the house. So whether that is a neighbor's spotlights or their spotlights, they've added some depth here with that light. They're also in shadow. Well, they are kind of in the dark. That's an interesting point, Clay, and it is dark. Actually, the lighting of this living room to me is very moody. It's very dark. I don't know many living rooms that would look like this. And certainly mine doesn't, because I have to have a lot of light. I have some eye conditions that in order to read, like I need a lot of light. And I have these big, gigantic picture windows. And during the day, I love that big light. Now this seems to be at night. But I would have much more light on these people. So I think that it's very interesting that this is clearly lit to all the light fixtures you see in this shot. And there's a light behind Donnie. These are behind people. There don't seem to be any lights on this part of the room. The implication a little bit, because then the question is, well, where is any light coming from that's on them? Like, where is this light coming from? Like, in terms of it being motivated, it's clearly coming from a light on the set that's above this man. And I guess they're implying it's coming from here, but there's no way this light is strong enough to highlight his hair. So those are just kind of things that I noticed when I stop a frame. It didn't actually stop me. But this is kind of, your guys having, popcorn and beer, watching football. And this side of the room is fairly dark, so they're very dim. And I really like your interpretation, Clay, that they're clueless about what's going on with Donnie. And Donnie's kind of dark and light because he's kind of caught in the middle. But overall, this is a very dimly lit scene. Hang on one sec. I'm going to just see if I
Order.
Did you notice this curtain blowing out here? It kind of billows a little, and to me, it is a precursor of the bubbles. Watch it. Oh, actually, it's plastic.
He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait.
And it must be connected to that, but that part all.
And it has been a disappointing night indeed.
That doesn't make sense to me now, because she's upstairs, clearly in the room that Donnie, where Donnie's room got kind of bombed by the airline.
Coach Joe Gibbs.
See this building?
Order. Remember, you need to go for safety.
Well, Mark Rippon certainly has some big shoes to fill, that's for certain.
He sure does. And so what the future holds for this Super Bowl MVP, we're just going to have to wait and see.
You guys want anything?
And so now the music's much more.
I'm gonna get beer.
And the football game is brought way down. It's still there. did really, really well on that. So you start to see how how the choices that the creative people on the film make, the director leading that, how the lighting, how the shot size, if they slow something down, they're meant to cue us. Those choices are meant to cue us both in terms of the story, but also the impact that that they want the film to have. Like they want us to understand what's in some people's minds, like Donnie's mind. We that coming in close to him and nobody else. We get the extreme close up of his eyes. We are meant to be trying to get in his head. The others are kind of oblivious to him and they're oblivious to us, and we're kind of a little bit oblivious to them because we're not brought into close-ups of them. We're not brought into their experience because it's not really crucial to the story. Any questions there? Okay, let's see where our slides lead us. Done. Here's where the slides lead us. Okay, so the book writes about form and expectation, and actually this applies to all kinds of story making. Like if you tell a story to a friend, a lot of times you try to lead little ways away along and then change things up so that they're kind of surprised. And so what the book is talking about and how film works is a lot of the time they're giving us enough that is familiar to us that we expect a certain kind of story, a certain trajectory of the story for the main character, but then they change it enough that we're kind of, our interest is maintained. We start to try to think of new things. So like once we figure out that Donnie has this, rabbit named Frank that's leading him, like we go, oh, okay, well, something's weird with that. And he sleepwalks. And sleepwalking can have psychological connections. So like that whole opening of the film, there's it's unusual because he wakes up in the middle of the street, gets on his bike and bikes home, but at the same time there's the home life is presented as being kind of realistic and normal. They have dinner together, the brother and the sister get into it, they use language that I would not have been allowed to use at my dinner table, but their home life is presented as real, and it is Donnie that has these experiences. So generally films and other stories set up certain expectations, and as the book talks about, generate patterns and then break them up for us to change up the story, but also to keep us interested and projecting what we think is going to happen next, which they usually try to thwart that as well. If you watch a film and you know exactly what's going to happen the whole way along, you're not going to be all that entertained. If you ever watch soap operas, and I did when I was younger, but I can't stand them now because they are so repetitive and predictable. And so at some point they're not entertaining anymore because this person, they one shot and that person's going to have a romantic relationship with this person. They end up in a blizzard, somebody's going to end up with amnesia. It's just too predictable, whereas really good films kind of keep you guessing. Okay, so they talk about expectations in Donnie Darko. And certainly he's seeing a counselor. At the very beginning, at the dinner table, the sister says, you want to tell mom and dad you've stopped taking your medication. So there is the implication that he has some issues. I think initially we're not quite sure whether it's depression or anxiety. It becomes more apparent that if it is a mental illness, it is something more severe that is causing him to do violent things. Absolutely, there are horror elements to this film. The appearance, just the visual appearance of Frank is a very horror element. That the teeth, the grotesqueness of Frank. He's not that little pink bunny in the mise en scène before. And then when the jet engine comes into Donnie's room, it's real. There's first responders there pulling it up on a crane. All of that has really happened. So it is kind of a back and forth between reality. We see how smart Donnie is. There's a couple of scenes at the school where it's clear he is a very, very smart person. And the principal even says something like, these test scores of yours are, I don't know if he says impressive or outstanding. He's clearly a very smart person. And I think that can make it harder in high school. Intimidating. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I knew it was something better than impressive. I think when somebody is that smart, like I was sort of bright in high school, but he clearly goes a level above that. And I think that makes it harder in high school. I think I actually worked at a farm in Massachusetts that was for people who had been institutionalized for mental health problems. And it's kind of a transition back to the real world. And we did, certain things with them. Like you were on a detail and you would have one person assigned to you, and it was to help them kind of, reacclimate to doing things. And a ton of the clients in that place had been at Harvard or Yale, or they were brilliant, brilliant people, and yet they had these emotional and mental illness problems. And I think sometimes they could see things in the world, not visually see them, but they could see the ways in which the world operated in ways that wasn't effective or efficient, and I think it impacted them. And Donnie seems to be operating at a bit of that intellectual level, and I think that's part of that alienation, disconnected theme. Let me go on. This is just something that's been written about a lot in both clinical books and in film things and story writing, literature writing, and that is that the human mind and eye always looks for patterns. Okay. I once read, when I look at a patch of ground that has a bunch of clovers, I can almost always pick out a 4-leaf clover if there's one there. And I read an article that said some people have that ability because of their ability to perceive patterns, and it breaks the pattern and you see it. So movies depend on our recognition of both story patterns, character patterns, visual and audio patterns, but they also then often break the pattern to kind of keep us on our toes. So the more these patterns meet our expectations or contradict them in interesting ways, the more likely we are to enjoy, analyze, and interpret the work. And I think what we're seeing with Donnie Darko, the form breaks, the bubble leading, the mirror thing, all of those things that seem very unreal, that leads us all constantly watching this film to try to interpret what is happening and why we are seeing that. More importantly, why Donnie is seeing that. Okay, here we are at parallel editing. Phew, I knew I would make it. And I didn't think the book was as clear as I wanted it to be, but it is two scenes that are cut back, and you're cutting back and forth between two scenes in the story that are taking place at different locations with different people. But by cutting back and forth between them at the same point in the film, it is implying they are taking place simultaneously. Parallel editing, yes. Did I say that? Did I say something else? Sorry. So I actually queued up. There we go. I'm going to go to this. There we go. Back we go. And this they actually talk about in the book, this this scene. Okay, back. Come on, Donnie, come to me. I had never seen, I did not know that Jake Gyllenhaal acted when he was this young. 54-32. Backing up. Okay. Wow. Yeah, and Maggie is there as well. And that table scene I think is so interesting because it is two siblings really bickering who are acting like who are playing two siblings. I've never seen the sequel to this. I would be interested in that. Wow. I didn't realize it was just 4 years. Wow. And that they did do a sequel where Samantha is having trouble because Donnie has died, and it's I think like 7 years later. I would not doubt that it's horrendous. Yes, S. Darko, that's correct. And that. Okay, I am going to, we're actually going to start, this is a couple frames ahead, but I'm going to play this example of parallel editing.
Yeah. And right now there's some fat guy over there staring at us.
Thank you for seeing us at such late notice. We've both felt that it was time for us to come in and discuss
what I think is going on with your son.
Yes. Well, he's you know about his past, and he was suspended from school for insulting his gym teacher.
Well, I'm not really sure that's a good example, Rose. I think he had just cause to insult her.
Rose, let me just lay out what I believe is happening here. Donnie's aggressive behavior, his increased detachment from reality, seemed to stem from his inability to cope with the forces in the world that he perceives to be threatening. Has he ever told you about his friend Frank?
Frank?
Yes, the giant bunny rabbit.
What?
I don't recall him ever having mentioned a rabbit.
Donnie is experiencing what is commonly called a daylight hallucination. This is a common occurrence among paranoid schizophrenics.
What can we do?
I would like to do more hypnotherapy and increase his medication.
Whatever will help him, really. That's why we're here. We just would like him to experience him, really. So, if you think that more medication will do that, then I think we should give it a try.
Okay, so in this scene, in this sequence actually, because it's two scenes, we are cutting back and forth between the scene taking place in the therapist's office and Donnie in the bathroom. He takes his medication and then he takes a knife and kind of stabs at the mirror where Frank is hanging out. And it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it is meant to, well, actually, let me ask you guys. What's it meant to do? Why is it there? Why did they not just show us mom and dad at the therapist's and then show us Donnie at home stabbing the mirror? Why did they intercut those? You know, Alex, I have that reaction so many times in things. Yes, absolutely. It's they're at the same time. It can be like, oh, okay, well, he really is unhinged. So it's interesting because some people feel like the two scenes contradict each other. And others feel like it reinforces like what the therapist is saying and what the mom's concerns are. Like, oh yeah, he does have some issues we need to deal with. And yeah, maybe like medicate the heck out of this kid. So it's interesting because the book says it's having us reevaluate what is happening at the therapist's office and then reevaluate what we're seeing, that we're going back and forth between this realist scene and then this formalist scene, that it's meant to pull us back and forth between Donnie's experience of this and kind of the clinical way it's being discussed. But that is parallel editing, those two scenes at the same time seeming to take place. Yes, absolutely. The therapist is concerned. It's interesting sometimes when I am showing a clip in class, I notice things that I hadn't noticed when I was prepping for class, like the little bunny rabbit. And I was looking just now at her office. And the decor in her office, it's a bit old-fashioned, and she could use with a little bit more light in her office too. But again, the film is these two scenes are taking place at night. They're meant to be simultaneous and everything. But a lot of the scenes where either his mental health is being discussed or he is having a Frank moment, they're very dim. And that's part of the darkness that's kind of overwhelming him and meant to make us feel a little creepy. Anything else about that particular sequence? Because I wanted to then go to another slide here. And this is where I thought that the book might have been a little bit confusing, because with parallel editing, it is that A, B, A, B, A, B. And they talk about, and they give you some examples in the book where it's kind of A, B, A, B, A, B, and you're meant like I think they use Silence of the Lambs when you're in with the serial killer and his victim in the pit, and then you see the FBI showing up at a house. And it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. These are supposed to be happening at the same time. But when the FBI breaks into the house, it's the wrong house. And so that's where if the one in Donnie Darko did not have this C that kind of disrupts the pattern and and kind of surprises us. But the one they talked about Silence of the Lambs, that's where the C comes in. So they don't always have a surprise that breaks them up. And I'm not going to show you the scene because I've shown you a lot of scenes. But this is where they talk about this AB, AB, AB pattern can happen in the does happen in the parallel editing. You're in one location, another location, back, back, back and forth, back and forth. But this is not a parallel editing sequence scene in the film. this is all happening in one location at one time. The dad and the dad is driving Donnie, and then Donnie is like, Dad, Dad, Dad. And then we cut to Miss Sparrow here in through the windshield. So that's a different kind of AB with C, Miss Sparrow being in the street as being what breaks that up. So shot, reverse shot is generally when you're going back and forth between two characters in conversation. And we'll talk about screen direction, everything. They make it so that it looks like they're in the correct orientation talking to each other, even though the car is in a different orientation. You see, like they're proceeding in a direction. But in order to make it look conversational, they have to have the two people looking like they're on opposite sides of the screen. So this is a different kind of editing, this shot, reverse shot, reverse shot conversation taking place, and then the C that is the surprise, okay? I need to take a breath, hang on. Aiden, they are exactly the same thing. There are two different terms for the exact same thing, is cross-cutting and parallel editing. So thank you for asking that. The book talks about this, and we've been in there. We've been in this thing, but at its very basic, film depends on light. It's responsible for the image we see, and it's responsible for the mood. You know, when we talked about the scene with the football and, you know, the lighting on Donnie's face being kind of half and half, and then the other side being kind of just dimly lit. Lighting is both a technical aspect of making films. You got to have enough light to get the image, okay? And it is a huge part of the artistic expression and form that the creatives use to get us where they want us to go emotionally, mentally, and narratively. Movies provide an illusion of movement, and this again refers back to the idea that it is a sequence of still frames, okay? But when we watch them uninterrupted, played before us at a certain speed, we perceive motion. And movies manipulate space and time in unique ways. So some of this we saw in Donnie Darko, and some of this we haven't seen yet, but we will along the way. Spatial refers to space, temporal refers to time. When you go to see a painting in a museum, it doesn't really change as you're sitting there. You're not going to a different location. As you're looking at it, you're not moving, time isn't changing, but film has all of that happening, as do novels and sometimes short stories and that. So it's not the only medium that manipulates time and space, but it does it in a unique way because we are immersed in it visually and audio wise. So we haven't this film actually does it. It does use slow motion, but there are no flashbacks. This is a linear story, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes if something scared me in a movie, I totally forget about it. But in this case, we start at Donnie waking up out there in the street, and we continue to the end. There is that part where the timeline seems to roll backwards after he is, after Gretchen dies and he's taking her up and sees the plane and everything. That is a manipulation of time. And since a whole part of this film is about time travel and the theory of it that Miss Sparrow put forward, and whether that's what's happening here. But it's not, I wouldn't call it technically a flashback, because flashbacks usually explain something. They're usually scenes that put us back in time so that we can learn something else about the main character and the story. Spaces, yes, that when you go back in time, oftentimes the spaces are different. I'm thinking of Back to the Future, and that, you know, Marty McFly is living his life with his mom and dad and everything, and then he gets in that DeLorean and ends up in the same town, but it's a flashback. And so the town is different. There, you know, there's different way of dressing. There's different ways that the town looks because he has flashed to the past. Speed ramping, that's, I mean, generally we talk about slow motion or speeded up motion. And actually, they do speed up the motion when they are rewinding time in that film. So that is a faster version of what Donnie has experienced. So generally, when we talk about it in class, we'll talk about slow motion. That I think that shot of the football player Williams, I think it starts to slip into slow motion, which cues Donnie and us that something's happening. He looks to his dad and the bubble appears. But it's also meant to cue us that, uh-oh, here we go. Something's going to be going on that isn't going to seem realistic to us, and we're going to be taken along by Donnie. Yeah, this I am going to post this in the resources PowerPoint slides thing, and these are some of the ways in which the film go deals the manipulation of time. This is the one that I think is most interesting, because the manipulation of time, the book is saying, suggests that time may be malleable and unpredictable and unstoppable, but can be looped around. There are interpretations of this film that are that Donnie has to rewind time and end up dying in the end with the airline motor falling on him in order to right the world. That they have slipped into a wormhole or a time loop that is where the whole world is going to be destroyed. That, you know, because Frank is saying it's so many 25 days, etc. And that Donnie saves the world in the end, even though he sacrifices himself. But he sacrifices himself so that Gretchen can live, so that Frank is alive again, the Frank that we meet at the end. And so part of the way that the form of the film, dealing with slow motion, the rewinding of time, all of that is meant to show us and have us understand this idea that time isn't the way we are taught, and most of us perceive it as linear and marching forward. Okay. And absolutely, the other way to look at it is that these shifts in time speed, time direction, time going backward, are actually representations of Donnie's mental illness. And you see that in the course of the film. Okay, I want to stop there before I go into the realism, anti-realism, and formalism thing, because that's the last part. But I want to just see, you know, do you feel that Donnie Darko is an understandable film? Or at the end, were you just like, why did I have to watch that? And I don't get insulted by these things, okay? What did you get as a message from the film? Did you like it? What do I mean message? I like that, Aiden. I'm not sure that that is always the case, but that it is. That is where I like it to be, except that we lose Donnie at the end. Yeah, Allison and Yasmin, I think a lot of us have that reaction and maybe have to watch it more than once. And I think if it's about time travel or even mental illness, it is, if it's about mental illness, what is the ending? You know, is it that Donnie ends up committing suicide, but we perceive it the way he perceives it, which is that the plane engine falls on him. Oh, good, Micah, that's good. Yeah, I had not seen this film when it first came out, and I primarily watched it because the book talked about it, and I wanted to see if I would subject you to it. It is confusing in many ways, but again, I think it has really, it has kind of a cult following, because this idea of a young person who doesn't fit in. His two teachers, the Drew Barrymore and Noah Wiley characters, they kind of see something in him that nobody else does, and you know that people his age don't, and so he's trying so much to find his place. And he, you know, that scene at the therapist's office where he cries and he says, "I don't want to be alone." I think that really speaks to people because we all have that. But then you also have these mysterious things happening, and is it part of the time travel thing, or is he experiencing schizophrenia, which requires treatment? Yeah, I think there were, you know, like, and even like one of my favorite moments in the film is where Mom is sitting with him and she's saying that she's going with Samantha out for the dance competition, and she says, you know, the other sister will drive you to therapy, and if you need anything, promise me you will call Dr. So-and-so. And he says, what does it feel like, Mom, to have a nutcase for a son, or some version of that? And she says, it feels wonderful. And she has a look on her face that makes you feel like she accepts him if he is ill. And yeah, to me, that was one of the nicest moments in the film, where sometimes she felt very much like a stiff suburban mom. And like in the cross-cutting scene I showed you, where she says, don't recall him talking about a rabbit. You know, she almost seems like kind of weirdly clinical about things. But that seemed to be a moment when she really loved Donnie. Yeah, I think that, Lacey, that's a good point, is that in some ways it leaves you thinking afterwards, and isn't that an interesting thing for a film to do? Like the open-endedness. Somebody up further here said that Micah said, you know, he likes a little bit of confusion at the end of a movie. So I think even if you didn't like it, I think if you watched it with, you know, sincerity, I think you have to admit it made you wonder. And you know, you could just dismiss it and just say, okay, that was too weird for me. But if you kind of let it, it will make you think about things that might be important. Yes. The last moment with Gretchen, you know, the implication is that time has rewound. He has set everything right. And so Gretchen he would never have met Gretchen if the first if he hadn't flooded the school, if none of that had happened. And yet the implication where they wave at each other is that there's some familiarity, and that's almost like a deja vu thing. Like, were they remembering this alternative reality that sort of wasn't supposed to have happened? But they did experience it, and now it's a deja vu thing. Ah, so interesting, Molly. I mean, there's no, in a world where what happened here could happen, where there is this other timeline that he loops into, the implication is there could be other ones. Yeah. And they actually do a lot of sound overlap in this film, just little ones. And that I noticed when they were cutting into the therapist's office for that parallel and anything, you start to hear the storm just a little bit. This is growl, and then they're going into this, and it kind of it's that change of mood, that change of in reality in the film, it is a storm is coming, but in the narrative, it's there's a storm coming. Okay. Yeah, like, you know her and never met her. And you know, I don't know if you've ever had those moments where you see someone and you swear you've been in that moment at that time, or that you know that person, but there really isn't that a real memory there. An unreliable narrator. I mean, the implication is that Donnie isn't a reliable narrator. If he has mental illness, we can't trust what we are seeing from his point of view. But because he introduced the time travel thing, constantly makes us second guess the mental illness timeline. That he is just trying to figure out something that he's smart enough to figure out, the time loop thing or wormhole thing, and it's giving him the ability to see things other people can't see. And so we're both questioning the family life. We're questioning whether Donnie is mentally ill, and then they introduce the part of the story that's about time travel, and so that makes us question, well, maybe he's not mentally ill. Maybe this is really happening. I didn't either until way late in the film, about Frank being the boyfriend. I didn't know she had a boyfriend for a long time. But sometimes I miss things. Haley, I think that is what it means. At least he's not arrested by the time we end the film. Yeah, he would not have been caught yet. If time had reset itself, it would have been, he is still beloved. But again, I think there are so many, this is a very, somebody wrote up above that it's a very complex story, and it is, because you could even yeah, but it doesn't, Allison, you're right, but it doesn't imply that he actually changed his ways. Yeah, Cole, that's very interesting. And yeah, I mean, it could all be a dream. It's just so interesting. But I think the layers about society, you know, the Jim Cunningham layer, of how much we rely on self-help gurus who, you know, are going to lead us between love and fear. And then, you know, the people who get very indoctrinated into that, like Mrs. Farmer, and the woman who's talking to the mom upstairs and thinks he's the bee's knees, but then we know he's this man who has the kiddie porn thing. And those kinds of things, the ways in which adults are not who they think they are and who they're trying to present themselves to be, the ways in which the adult world kind of makes you take on roles that kind of screw with your humanity. I think there's layers of that. Gretchen's stepfather has stabbed her stepmother. The domestic violence. There's references to so many aspects of society that are kind of screwed up that I think that's so interesting. The religious aspect. I mean, because they kind of have a thing of the religious school structure, but you don't really see nuns or priests, and most religious schools do have an element that. But I mean, I think that it's a little bit implied in religion. They didn't come full at it, so I think it is hard to understand. But again, I don't think it comes off as incredibly positive. It's not quite where Spotlight was with what, the manipulations, but I mean, like even Drew Barrymore's character being fired for this book she has brought into the classroom that is about alienation of young people. The Mrs. Farmer seems to imply that it is obscene in some ways, or that it's leading students wrong in some ways. So there's definitely some more morality tales going on in here where the hip teacher says you don't have the first clue of what is going to touch these kids and help us keep them, and they're like, yeah, we'll fire you anyway. So yeah, and like at one point the Noah Wiley character says, I can't continue this conversation because I would lose my job. And certainly very, very, very Catholic or schools, they don't even allow you to teach evolution. So there's kind of like little hints about it, but it isn't overpowering to me enough to really know what they were trying to do. Anyway, you did a great job with form and content, even though the content doesn't ultimately always make us know exactly an interpretation of it. But I do want to finish up with the realism, formalism, anti-realism thing, and it's going to give me an opportunity to show you something else. Have to scroll way down. Okay. Okay. That gave me a chance to click on something else that I now have to go and show you. I'm hoping it hasn't started without me. Good, it hasn't. Okay. So I wanted to show this to you in case you have not already found it. With your textbook and Inquisitive, you also have other digital resources. So I'm here in my little page, and this is my page. You don't, I don't think you have this student grades thing. Did somebody just say something? Oh, yeah. Actually, that whole, and Mrs. Farmer being so like into that just struck me as odd, and that in a way that I've known people like that. So here we are on the digital Norton page, and if you haven't been there yet, there are videos. They claim there's interactives. I haven't quite found them that you can watch related to I think sometimes in the book they say, oh, you can watch this video. So sometimes when they're talking, writing about in the book, a parallel editing thing, they have a video about that too. And so I did this in order to take you to the anti-realism and formalism video that I am going to try to show you. Oh, good, there it is. Now, how do I make it bigger? Maybe I just hit play.
In order.
There we go. Yes, worked.
In order to understand the difference between anti-realism and formalism, we have to know the difference between form and content. Content is the subject of an artwork. Form is the way that subject is expressed. Next, we need to understand realism, because formalism and anti-realism both operate in opposition to realism. Realism in film attempts to provide a realistic experience for the viewers. In terms of content, that means storylines that portray the everyday lives of ordinary people. When it comes to form, realism avoids any style that draws attention to itself and away from the reality of the story. So realism in film means naturalistic performances and dialogue, unembellished sets and settings, and unobtrusive framing. A lot of films that embrace realism don't even cast well-known actors. Some of them cast people who have never acted at all. So now that we've covered form, content, and realism, we can talk about the difference between anti-realism and formalism. Like I said, they both operate in opposition to realism. Anti-realism is different than realism in terms of content. Movies that embrace anti-realism have content that is speculative or fantastic. They seek to tell us stories that take us out of everyday reality. Formalism is different than realism in terms of form. Formalist films are conspicuously stylish, with elaborate sets and costumes, theatrical performances, distinctive compositions, and lighting. Lots of films that employ formalism also embrace anti-realism, and vice versa. They are both defined in opposition to realism, just in different ways. Anti-realism is different than realism in terms of content. Formalism is different than realism in terms of form.
Thank you. The ending part of the chapter in the chapter 2 deals with formalism, realism, and anti-realism. And so I showed you that video because I think it makes it a little clearer how anti-realism and formalism differ. Parts of Donnie Darko are realist in that we see a high school that looks like a high school. We see kids in class that look like kids in class. We see people having dinner, a family having dinner, and that is realist. Then when we see the effects that Donnie perceives, the bubble coming out, Frank just appeared. Now, Frank could just be a dream at first, but then eventually Frank becomes a presence that that we understand is a manifestation to Donnie. Time rewinding. Those are formalist elements. They are part of the way in which the filmmakers are, how they are telling us the story. is there anti-realism in this film? Would the time travel element be anti-realist, or does it actually fall more in a realist but weird area? Ah, Clay, you're right there. Yeah, I mean, it depends who you ask. Those of us who are sci-fi people, we so want time travel to come into existence. And yet, at the same time, there are great dangers with time travel. Well, Molly, that's interesting, because if he's mentally ill and we are perceiving them as he perceives them, but they are part of his illness, would they be realist? Would they be realism? That it is a visualization by the filmmakers of what it is like to truly be schizophrenic. So is it realist? Yeah. So again, it's how you kind of look at it. His hallucinations could be considered anti-realism if you don't think time travel is possible and you don't think he's mentally ill. Then it is time travel is not possible, so it's anti-realism. It's being presented there. So I'm realizing as I'm talking right now how much of this class has been about the in-between parts of film, that there are things that can absolutely be defined. This is a wide shot. This is a location. But so much of what I've brought you as examples today, and then this final question, is that there are things that are open for interpretation, and that a scene can move from one location to another if the camera follows it along, and it is the same story element that we are following. And this, realism, formalism is absolutely in here. There are things that draw attention to the filmmaking process and are meant to not look realistic to us. Like most of us, I'm hoping, have not seen bubbles coming out of our chests that lead us somewhere. So, and slowing down the visuals, doing slow motion, speeding up visuals, that's all part of form. That's all formalism. It's that how we interpret the story to a large extent determines whether we would call this realist or realism with elements of anti-realism too. Honestly, I probably, in terms of identifying a film, they talk, I can't remember which film they talk about in the book that they say is really formalist, like all formalist. I often show a film called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Grand Budapest Hotel, interesting. Like there's an old German expressionist film where all the sets are painted, the shadows are painted, the distortion is painted on there. That is often considered one of the great formalist films in that everything is very unrealistic. Okay. You don't generally see those kinds of films anymore unless it's an experimental film or an art film of some kind. But we do see a lot of formalism in films now. Even like they showed in the video I just showed you, like there's a frame from the Chadwick Boseman film. I'm really having a hard time today with my little names. Thank you. And so sometimes anti-realism films are full of formalism as well, because a lot of times the fights or the special effects of characters or actions or anything are part of the formalist tendency of showing things in a, that the filmmakers are showing things in a way that makes us go, wow. But the story itself is also anti-realist because it is fantastic and superhero element. Okay, I am actually getting close to keeping my word that we will end some classes early. You are watching films in addition to doing the readings, and so usually when they do give us a 3-hour block, they are counting on some of that time being the watching of films, and I make you do that somewhere else. So I am at the end of my slides for today. You've done a great job looking at Donnie Darko, which is a really complex film. And I know for Intro to Film Studies or Film Studies 1, maybe people think we should be looking at things that aren't quite as challenging, but I think this is how to get into the deep end pretty fast, and you guys have done a great job understanding what is content, what is form, the ways in which this film kind of messes with our minds at the same time that poor Donnie is being messed with, and that different meanings can come from the same film to different people. And then, anybody have any questions before I let you go? Reminder that the annotated bibliography is due next week before class. Reminder, you get a 15-minute grace period. Now, granted, that would be during class. So if you submit it by 10:15, there's no late penalty. Reminder that it's 10% per day for it being late. But you can turn it in late for up to 5 days, and we will still mark it, okay? I have office hours at 1 o'clock, and I will be there. Amy,